Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm streaming my first live Q&A here from New Zealand to anyone who's attended either our live cohort workshops or has signed up for our self-paced version. Some of you had questions, and I offered to run this basically on a monthly basis. For 2024, at least for October, we're running it at the end of the month, but from November onwards, we'll be running it around the 15th, the middle of each month. So let's get started. I know some of you have attended the workshop we just recently ran live, and it's been about 3 to 4 weeks now. So I just want to see if anyone has done the exercises and had any questions. How do you stay motivated to keep to a creative routine? Oh, that's a good one. Okay, let's have a look at that question. Motivation. I didn't share this in the workshop. The motivation is something that we all struggle with. So let's think about it like this. We all have on the inside a motivation strategy. Like we have on the inside a way we do creativity. We also have a way we do motivation. And at a high level, we can think of it as we're either pain avoidant or pleasure orientated. We're typically one or the other. We might be both in different contexts, but the way we motivate ourselves depends on how we've basically been wired on the inside. We might not be conscious of it, but we're either, I want that, so you go towards the goal, or I don't want that, so I avoid pain. So when you look at motivation, the first things that I need to think about, and I encourage you to think about, is how do you motivate yourself? Are you pain avoidant or are you goal oriented? I'm pain avoidant, so I'm known as a procrastinator. I know that about myself. I have to wait for the deadline to get closer and closer and closer and closer until the pain crosses the threshold and kicks me into action. Knowing that, if I have a creativity routine, I need to somehow motivate myself by setting deadlines and setting them close to me to push me into doing things. If you are a pleasure-oriented person, you can look at what it is you want to achieve and go, I want that, and make sure you set small goals in your day-to-day routines or weekly routines. You reward yourself basically, or you say, I'm going to get to that point at by this time, and I can't wait to get there, so let's get going. I hope that answers your question, Laura. We're not fully answering your question in terms of how do you keep to a creative routine, but the starting point is, how do you motivate yourself? Thanks, made sense. I started out strong, but as time goes, yes. Okay, well, that's all part of the motivation thing as well. But this is another thing we call the suntan effect. After running workshops for years, what I've found is come back, you're looking nice and brown, you've got a tan. 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, it's like you haven't been on holiday at all. We call that the suntan effect, and it happens with workshops, and you go in and all excited. You start out strong, but 4 weeks later, it's faded. The suntan effect was faded. That rush of emotion that you had at the workshop has faded. So this is why we talk about the inner playbook, the stuff we do on the inside, and the outer playbook, which is the stuff you do on the outside. What you have to do is engineer your external environment to ensure you continue to be motivated. There's two ways we've done this when we've run workshops. One is we either do a coaching follow-up. Here's a follow-up right now. There's an example of one. We've got a Q&A. So it's a multi-part answer. Depending on your personality, going to a Q&A session like this, asking questions, interacting is one way of doing it. A coaching framework is another way of keeping you on target. Could be as simple as a 20-minute session a month to check in and get some motivation from someone who's outside but understands what you're trying to achieve. The other is to use the exercise that we taught you about, attaching handles to a particular state that would be useful for you, and you can go and grab that and use it as and when you need it. Creating an external environment that supports you in your set of goals. So that's planning. So you make sure that you set up a routine that aligns with your motivation. This is what we talked about before. The way you do motivation, and you engineer that environment to keep that tan going as long as it can. Okay, Laura, thanks for that. Any other questions? All right. Oh, okay. We've got another one. You got it just in time. Okay. I've always had lots of ideas on the inside. I have a strong visual imagination. I can picture things really well. Is that creativity? I'm not so great on the outside. Example, okay, what is it? My drawings are rubbish. I can see in my head, I see all these clear, it's always clear and detailed. That's a really good question. If you remember the course where I talked about our thesis of creativity is it's a combination of what you do on the inside expressed in the external world. The unfortunate truth, well, not unfortunate truth, but the thing I think most people need to understand is expressing creativity on the outside takes practice. All drawers, I mean, I've got a book here somewhere on Picasso and his early drawings, and his early drawings were as bad as my scribbles when I tried to do a little bit of art, and they were very childlike. And it's like, wow, that's Picasso at age 20 or 21 or whatever. Horrible. But you see him a few months later, and then drawings a year later, and you see his style develop over time. It's like any skill. You need to develop a set of skills in the medium that you want to create. It could be writing, it could be dancing, it can be anything. Any human endeavor in which you want to express creativity, you can, but it does take practice. So that stuff you're doing on the inside, I can tell you what creativity is. I can tell you, if you remember that pizza exercise we did, you put a label on something that you call creativity. If you can visualize things really, really well, that's a fantastic talent to have. It takes practice to express that internal vision that you have on the outside. That whole thing you might want to call or label as, creativity. I have really great visions. I can see things really clearly. Expressing them is where I need to practice. So I would call that creativity. Oh, here we go. Yes, practice. You can't escape practice. If you want to develop a skill, that's what you need to do. Yeah. All right. Thanks. I think that's it. We'll see you around the 15th of next month, November. And thanks for turning up. I'm glad someone turned up to our first session here.